Welcome to WhatGear reviews for the night comparison between the People's Champ, the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II, and the flagship Samsung S series phone, the S20 Ultra, and one of the top rated smartphones when it comes to camera, the Huawei P40 Pro. So I'm setting myself a goal of 700 likes on this video. If you guys could help me crush that, I'd appreciate it. And if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you're subscribed with your notifications on. And this introduction should serve as a good mic test and a fairly low light video test on the selfie cameras. Let me know which one you think's winning here in the intro, and are you ready to see some photos? Let's go. Okay, so picture one of this incredibly good looking person that I know. Only joking, it's me. But anyway, the results here were very interesting. You can see on the Sony, even though everybody was talking a lot of bad stuff about the selfie camera on the Sony, it actually performed one of the best here when it comes to medium low light, especially when you compare it to how bad the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra is doing here in exactly the same conditions. And I even doubted this a little bit. I checked the timestamps on the photos, and all three of these photos were taken within the same minute. So don't think that I've purposely tried to make one look worse than the other. There's an incredible amount of digital noise on the S20 Ultra picture. The Sony pictures, really nice, very detailed. You can see all of the bags under my eyes and everything. One thing I would say about that photo though is there's a bit too much magenta in the image, a little bit too much purple. And then when we look at the P40 Pro photo, you can see why this is one of the top ranked camera smartphones you can get, because that photo you could mistake for a daylight photo. The skin tones are perfect. It's very bright, it's very detailed, very color accurate. So interesting results here in picture one. And just to give you guys an idea of how dark it actually was at this point in time, I literally left this park about 20 minutes later and I filmed some footage of me walking back towards the car. So check this out. This will serve as a good nighttime 1080p 30 frames per second video comparison. So when it comes to nighttime video quality, what you're seeing on the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II is probably the best representation of what it actually was like. It was incredibly dark. As I was walking up, before I got close to the street lights, I could barely see my hand in front of my face. So maybe it is the most accurate, but one of the advantages of the bigger image sensors on the Huawei and on the Samsung is how much more light they can take in, and that's why the P40 Pro video is so bright. But saying that, Samsung doesn't quite match it in terms of brightness, and there's this kind of orange hue over everything, which is somewhat accurate. But you could see at the beginning of this clip, the Samsung was really struggling to capture focus, where the other two were doing a pretty good job. Very interesting results here. Let me know what you think about the nighttime video, and let's move on to picture two. Here's a photo of the once abandoned cinema. It's now back open again, and I can't wait for the new Batman movie. I don't know about you guys, you see that trailer? I'm vengeance. That looks awesome. Anyway, sidetracked. So check out these three photos. Now if we start on the left hand side with the Samsung, it's a great bright photo, great detail on the brickwork in the foreground, nice light reflecting off the concrete, which is awesome. That neon light actually there on the side of the building though, is a little bit too overexposed. We can't really make out that it is in fact lettering. And then also when you look up at the sky above the building, there was obviously quite a bit of digital noise there, and the software seems to be trying to smooth it out, and as a result you're kind of getting this sort of blotchy, patchy effect in the sky, which I'm not a big fan of. Now when you look at the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II photo, again you're probably getting the most accurate representation of the colors at that time. There are various street lights out there and they are this kind of orange tone, and when I took these photos I'd look at them afterwards and then look with my eyes at what I was taking the photo of and try to figure out which one looks the most realistic, and it probably is the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II. We're getting this really nice detailed image, a little overexposed again, and you can see that again on the neon sign. But also if you look at the top right corner where the light on the building is, you can see how it's just blowing out the highlights just a bit too much there. But apart from that, it's doing a great job. We're not getting that horrible noise in the sky like on the Samsung photo. Then on the Huawei P40 Pro photo, again, the brightest of the three, probably the most detailed of the three, and is handling those brightest areas of the image the best. Really, you can't fault it, other than the fact that that is not how it looked to my eye, but that's what you want sometimes. You want things to look better than they do with your eye. You want it to enhance it and make it even more enhanced, even more sharp and more dramatic than what we can see in a low light scenario with our own eyes. So it's a great result here from the P40 Pro. Let me know what you prefer the best, and let's move on to picture 3. So this photo was taken in incredibly low light, and let's start from right to left this time. So let's start with the P40 Pro Photo. Again, the most brightest of the 3. Huawei have really nailed it when it comes to this low light software. The only other phone that I can think of that comes even a little bit close to Huawei when it comes to low light is the Google Pixel phones. The image is so bright, you can see way back into the distance down the path. You can even see that I'm holding my hand up with a dog treat. You can't see the dog treat, but you can see I'm holding my hand up to try and get the dog to stay still in that photo. Now if we look at the Sony photo, this is a great representation of the colors actually at the time, and I actually do like the way it's added these kind of purple tones there in the background. I don't know if they were actually there or not because I didn't take this photo myself, but overall as an image I actually like the Sony photo the best in this one. Now when we look at the Samsung photo, we're getting this kind of vignette around where I am. All of the details on the left hand side of the photo are pretty much non-existent. You can see on the Sony and on the Huawei photos, the details on the leaves in the tree. You can't see that at all on the Samsung. A little bit disappointed here, and there's definitely a lot more noise in the photo on the Samsung as well. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. Let's see if Samsung can redeem themselves. And in this one they kind of do. So this photo, I had the 3 phones on a rig on a short tripod and put it on the ground and took a photo up into the night sky here. I was hoping to catch some stars or something here, but not this time. But saying that, there is one star there on the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II photo. But check this out, the Samsung does a lot better here, and I don't know whether it's because the phone was more stabilized there on the tripod or not. We're getting a good amount of detail in the foreground. There's a good amount of sharpness around the basketball hoop and the backboard, and a good amount of detail on the backboard as well. And this time we're not seeing that kind of noise in the night sky like we've seen in the other photos. Now let's look at the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II photo, and you can see it's incredibly dark. And actually where I was standing when I took this photo, it was incredibly dark. Again, I probably couldn't see my hand in front of my face where I was standing. So this might be the most accurate, but is that what you want from a low light photo? Or do you prefer a very brightened up, very sharp, vivid photo like we're seeing here on the P40 Pro? Again, the brightest of the 3, a great amount of detail there, more so than the other 2 phones. And the way that the phone does this without overexposing other parts of the image really is something special. So overall we're getting 3 different results here. Sony most accurate to the eye, Samsung very well balanced and quite bright, and then the Huawei P40 Pro very bright, very detailed. Let me know which one wins, and let's move on to the next one. So we're going from dark to even darker. This was literally pitch black. I was literally standing in the middle of this field, and those lights are very far away in the distance. And I'm actually very impressed with myself that I managed to get the dog to stay still for long enough to take this photo. But check this out. The Samsung and the Huawei P40 Pro have the night mode, and that's what I used. And on the Sony I used the auto mode. I didn't go into the manual settings. And what we're getting is 2 very similar results here on the Samsung and on the Xperia. It was an incredibly dark setting. We can see some of the raindrops reflecting off of the ground. But this is where the Huawei P40 Pro really shines, because look how much detail is there in the foreground, the raindrops on the grass. You can see way more detail on the dog, and the tennis ball in front of her is very clear. I think this one has to be a clear win for the P40 Pro. Now this is the classic tree photo that I take pretty much in every single night photo comparison that I do, and we're getting really close results between the S20 and the Huawei P40 Pro. The Sony Xperia really struggled here to find its focus, and I didn't go into the Photo Pro app and mess around with that. I wanted to do this comparison just with the auto mode on the Xperia for this one. I've got another video in mind where I'm going to go way more in depth, and I did make an in-depth tutorial about how to use Sony's Photo Pro mode, which I'll link at the end of this. But anyway, very sharp details there on the Samsung, very sharp details there on the Huawei P40 Pro. Color wise, they're pretty much similar. Maybe there's a bit more noise on the S20 Ultra photo. The Sony really just struggled to get that focus, and I'm sure it can do better. I put it down to the fact that there was a LED street light directly above, and maybe that was throwing off the focus on the Xperia 1 Mark II. We'll revisit this photo in another video on the Sony, so make sure you're subscribed and turn on your notifications for when that video comes out. Anyway, let's move on to the next one, the rusty padlock. Now this one was quite well lit, and although at first glance they look pretty similar, there are some pretty major differences here. So on the Samsung, it actually looks the most detailed to me, because if you look closely at the white paint on the top of the post, you can actually see the brush strokes there on the S20 photo, and lower down the image as well, it's still kind of retaining that sharpness and detail, which is fantastic. When we look at the Sony photo, the padlock itself and the raindrops there on the padlock look really cool, very detailed, and that was kind of the focal point of the photo. But in other areas it gets a bit soft, like around the top of the post for example, and where it's kind of rusting away. And now if we look at the Huawei P40 Pro Photo, overall a great image, slightly more contrasty and darker in the shadows than the other two, and you can see that where the shadow of the padlock is on the actual post itself, we're losing a bit of detail there in the shadows, but overall detail was fantastic. But this one might be a win for the S20 Ultra. Let me know what you think, and let's move on to a very low light selfie shot. Now at this point it was really dark, and I had to get a little bit close to a street light to try and take this photo without it looking completely horrible. But check this out, this is what I think. The S20 Ultra photo is a bit too purple. We're seeing that kind of blotchy noise in the night sky behind. The highlights may be a little bit too bright, but overall not a bad photo. The Sony image, however, I'm incredibly green, like I'm about to turn into the Incredible Hulk or something, but there is quite a good amount of detail there. The sky is incredibly noisy and pixelated, which is not ideal. Then when we look at the Huawei P40 Pro Photo, it looks like I've just come back from a 2-week holiday in the Costa del Sol, where I spent most of the time on a sunbed, which is not the case. I actually had to cancel my holiday to Spain last month, and I'm still upset about it. But anyway, the white balance is slightly too much on the warmer side here on the P40 Pro. But with that said, it might be the nicest image of the three, and the closest to my skin tone, even though it isn't quite right. To be fair, all three phones perform pretty well given this incredibly low light scenario. And overall, if you had to pick one winner when considering all of the photos you've seen up until this point, which one would it be? Let me know in the comments below. And I want to say thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this one, you might enjoy part 1 where I did the daylight comparison. That thumbnail is on screen right now. If you want to see which one of these phones is the fastest, I did a speed test between these three. That thumbnail is on screen. And if you just subscribed, you're now one of the finest subscribers known to man. I'll see you guys in the next one. Don't be late.